Hello and welcome to Legalbytes. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we explain the law one bite at a time. We don't give legal advice, but we do talk about how the law works and try to look into our crystal ball to see how things might turn out. If you're enjoying this on YouTube, we'd love it if you could like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with friends, all the great YouTube-y stuff. And if you want to listen while out and about, we're now offering our live streams in podcast form where you can leave a rating and review. Links are in the description below, as well as to our clips channel where you can find some of the best clips taken from our live streams. Otherwise, if you want to catch me elsewhere, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you want to support the channel, you can do so on Locals, Patreon, or by becoming a YouTube member, or by buying some really awesome Legalbytes merch. Again, all links are in the description below. And with that said, let's get into it. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're coming from. I hope you are having a wonderful Monday. I see some folks in the chat saying like, yes, I'm making a live. I know, because this is a different time zone or time slot, I guess, that I normally live stream because of the time zone that I live in. But obviously I'm not in my usual studio. If you haven't seen the last couple of videos on this channel, you may not know I'm visiting family right now. I'm out on the West Coast, the American West Coast. So I am, I'm reconstituting some space in Mama Bites and Papa Bites house. and taking a little bit of live stream content here. I do see, Shireen says Angela Levy from Law and Crime posted the Depp statement. Okay, give me just 1 second here. You know what? Let's see. Let's see if I can do multiple things at once. This never goes well because I want to be talking at the same time, providing content. Okay, so this is the same statement that I have seen posted around, which I think originally came from the TMZ article, which we will be sharing a little bit of. We'll be talking a little bit about. Of course, we've got a lot to talk about here, right? But let's first say hi to folks in the chat. Where is everybody coming in from? I always love when people let us know where they're coming in from. Let's see. We've got old chick, almost midnight in Poland. I go to work in 8 hours, but I'm so curious that I have to wait and see what this is all about. Thank you, Lita, for your amazing work. Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for hanging out. I mean, this is just wonderful. And I'm sorry to keep you up. We'll try to streamline this a little bit, right? So we don't take too long going over this, but we've got Living Life with and Singing Songs with Mallory. Hello again today from the same place as this morning. I was just starting the video from this morning and decided I'll watch this live, and then that and all my other videos I need to watch. Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Brittany Chanel, good evening from Illinois. This whole thing shouldn't have lasted this long. I know we've got all kinds of thoughts, and we'll get into it. Perceptions of Reality. Hi from New York. Hope everyone is well. Darth Sarah, it's 9 a.m. here in Australia, and it's my first day of Christmas break. I was clicking around for something to watch, and this popped up. Hi, all. Well, hey, Darth Sarah. Very happy to have you here. And Merry early Christmas. Very happy to see that you are on vacation. Brunch on the Orient Express. Hello from South Carolina. DJ Cymatics, hello again from England. Hello. Miriam Morales, hello from Spain. Jenny D from Dallas. We've got a Frenchie in London. Hello from Oxford, UK. And oh my gosh, and then we just got a whole bunch of folks here. Let's see. We've got someone from LA. Is it Louisiana or Los Angeles? I'm going to say Los Angeles. Katharina from Austria. We've got Nick M from New Jersey. We've got, did I already see Miriam Morales from Spain? I think I did. Well, we got you twice. Clint Woodlock from Mississippi. Terry Holcomb from West Virginia. Isamara Rodriguez from New York. Janet, hi from UK. Let's see. This is, I'm totally going to mispronounce your name, and I apologize in advance. Is it Josian or Josian? Yotor, maybe? Hello from Berlin. I'm so sorry. I know I completely screwed that up. I'm sorry. But hello from Berlin. Hello back to Berlin. Leanne, hello from Missouri. We've got Magnum Patrol, Michigan here. We've got Wells I think, from Catalonia. Jorge Oyola from Uruguay. Good to see you. Dale Ann Harsh from Southern California. Southern California in the house. Always, always, always. And then, oh gosh, this is an Irish name that I know I totally screw up all the time. But is it it's like an ash, it's like a sh sound, right? Like Shobin, maybe from Ireland. I'm so sorry. Kathy and Oz from Kansas. We've got aliens are from space. Hello from Bulgaria. Kirsten Photo from Netherlands. Oh my goodness, we really have a bunch of people from all over. Jason Howe from Australia. Eva H from Ireland. Kim Farnham from Northern Nevada. Oh my goodness. Okay, we've got another from Sweden. MJ Silverver. Okay, and Ann J from Warsaw, Missouri. Love it, love it, love it. Okay, sorry guys, I've got to. I feel like I've got to keep getting it. Okay, Imara Lopez from Costa Rica. Love it. CC Mills, hi from the UK. Okay, guys. All right, all right. And oh, it's pronounced Siobhan. Siobhan. Okay, the Irish name. I see that in the chat. Okay, thank you, thank you. We've even got from Mexico. We've got Portland, Oregon. Oh my gosh, London, of course, Florida. Okay, love it, love it, love it, love it. Okay, okay, Toronto, Ontario, Nebraska. Okay, love it, you guys. I love seeing where folks are coming in from. Always so fun to see this whole international crowd that we've got here. And of course, this trial, this case drew in an international crowd because we're talking about Johnny Depp. He is, of course, an international. I mean, we can actually say international rock star, right? Like initially, I would have thought of him as an international, like Hollywood celebrity, acting star, but these days he's rocking, right? Like he's on his tour that he's been on since the trial ended, and he's been just living his life, and it's been wonderful. It's been really great to see. So, but now, we've been going through this whole appeals process, right? Because both sides have decided to appeal the verdict. Amber Heard first decided to appeal, and it looked like, based on the messaging and based on the actual timing of things, it looked like Johnny Depp was appealing because Amber Heard was appealing. And so, on this channel, we didn't go through all of the filings, right? There were amicus briefs, there were replies to the amicus briefs, all kinds of stuff like that. And so the what was I going to say? So we haven't gone through all of that stuff, but that's been going on since, the last couple months. But we have gone through the appellate briefs by Johnny Depp and by Amber Heard, the reply briefs, and see, we've kind of been analyzing on this channel, and of course elsewhere around LawTube. Like everyone's been still keeping tabs on this case, at least to a certain degree, right? Going through the arguments and seeing, like, what are the strengths and weaknesses, what's the likelihood of success on either end. I think generally speaking across the board, people were seeing that Johnny Depp's side was more likely to succeed on appeal than Amber Heard's side, right? She had the kitchen sink approach, whereas kitchen sink approach, meaning that she was just tossing in anything and everything, like throwing spaghetti at the wall, seeing what'll stick, right? Seeing what kind of arguments might be, successful, possibly, who knows? But that usually, when it comes to appeals, that's usually not the most wise strategy, because you're likely to get lost in the sauce, so to speak. On Johnny Depp's side, they were much more exacting. They really just narrowed down the scope to, like, some very limited issues, some very specific issues. And they had some really good legal theories, legal arguments as to why they should succeed on that. And I think that they were much more likely to succeed. So now I think everyone has kind of, like, had this very strong sudden reaction, because this was just a total surprise, right? No one expected to see this happening at this point in time, right? I think that there were some discussions that people were having about a potential settlement of the appeals process, to see, like, is it possible for both of them to kind of walk away before the appellate courts actually came forward with their decisions on both sides, on both appeals. People were having discussions about that, but I don't think that anyone really expected them to happen so soon and so suddenly. And so, to a certain extent, it's nice to have closure, right? It's great to have closure. But at the same time, when it happens so suddenly, it can feel like, interesting. Um, so okay, now I think that one of the things that I've noticed about the initial reactions to the settlement is there's an emotional reaction, and then there's the logical and strategic kind of reaction. What you'll see from probably from most, if not all, of the lawyers on YouTube and elsewhere is probably going to be a reaction that is coming from the standpoint of strategy, of, like, coming from our experience in litigation or in law generally, in talking about realistically how these kinds of disputes end up, right? Like, we talked about this. I mean, we've talked about this in so many different cases, right? Like, cases tend to settle out even before trial, right? So the fact that this even went to trial, went through an entire full trial, is is kind of remarkable, to be honest, because it's kind of unlikely. Now, when we talk about the messaging of the headlines and everything, the MSN kind of spin on what exactly this is, that kind of becomes an interesting second story, right? And so, and I know Rick Hogue over at Hogue Law, he already had a live stream earlier. I popped on for like 2 minutes just to say hi, basically. Um, uh, and we talked about it a little bit there, but going through some of the headlines there, he loves going through the headlines, and just like the all of the messaging by the MSM. And but what I want to go through primarily is the two statements that have come out from either side here. And to sort of go into what exactly this is, right? And that's why, like, that's why I titled this live stream, like, what exactly did Amber Heard and Johnny Depp just settle? Because there are a lot of different perceptions that people might have as to what exactly this agreement is and what it means. And yeah, so let's go through it like that. But first, let's see. John O'Rourke, thanks so much for your generous super chat. Says, Bites, is AH admitting defeat and paying ex-husband $1 million? If this trial went to appellate court, then she lost. She'd be required to pay 8 million plus million by law. This is AH waving the white flag. Thoughts? Merry Christmas, everyone. So yes, I definitely see this as Amber Heard admitting defeat. I think that the one article I tweeted about this, the one article that I've seen so far that, like, has it, what I view as basically an accurate headline on this, is from Law and Crime Network, that they're just like, Amber Heard admits defeat, settles out her appeal. Um Everything else is like, Amber Heard settled her case against Johnny Depp. Like, it's very interesting to see the sort of like one-sided nature that NBC and these other outlets often have, for this, that sort of paint this as like a massive disappointment for Johnny Depp. And I completely understand the the emotional reaction that so many of his supporters have on this. I view myself at this point as one of Johnny Depp's supporters. Going into the trial, I was somewhat, let me see. Let me back up for a second. Going into coverage of this case. So, like, a little bit before the trial, I started to cover this case as well. And I started to talk to people in the Justice for Johnny Depp community, and I did put out feelers for the other side to see, is there anyone else that I can talk to? Got no one, right? But going into it, I was as neutral as I like to be on any case, right? I sometimes, people can sometimes even be a little bit frustrated by how neutral I can be on a lot of these cases, until I feel like I have seen enough that I'm like, okay, like, I feel like I can firmly plant my feet right here and we're good to go. So in this case, going into the trial, I was at about 60%, in favor of like Johnny Depp is probably the prevailing party here. He's probably the one who was done dirty in this case. And then that just was what continued to be reinforced by the evidence as it actually laid out. But I guess to answer your question, I think the likelihood of Amber Heard paying $8 million to Johnny Depp was relatively low, given what we know about the financial troubles that she's been exhibiting. Of course, I say that, and then at the same time, I remember like all of the articles about her like jet setting across this, across the world and going to Israel and all this kind of stuff. Most likely she's someone else is paying for that, right? She's not paying for that herself. Realistically, with the kind of work that she's going to be getting moving forward after Aquaman, that stuff finishes up, I don't see there being that much of a market for her work realistically, right? Because you look at the social media response, you look at the response en masse, right? Like you can look at the headlines that are written by journalists or so-called journalists, if you want to call them that. We can talk on a case-by-case basis based on who's writing what. You can en masse, generally speaking, when it comes to like, will people go to see a movie that is headlined by Amber Heard? I don't think so. So realistically, the likelihood of her being able to pay out the full $8 million, pay out the full, that she would have been due on balance, right? Minus the 10 million, minus the 2 million. I don't think that she would have realistically been able to pay that. So her paying 1 million and then saying, okay, we're done, I'm not fighting this anymore. There's a lot that goes into litigation that is financial, emotional, and physical, that is going to play a massive role in decisions like settlement. So I think at the end of the day, I think this is a win for Johnny Depp. I think this is, although there is a part of the emotional side that feels like I want total defeat, like this is this is like, it's almost like this is war, right? This is a war, and we, when we are this emotionally invested, we want to see that the other side has been completely defeated. Like she's never gonna go out and try to spin things in her defense and to look good for her from her perspective. She's going to continue to do that, regardless of whether there was a settlement or not, regardless of whether she lost the appeal handily. She was going to realistically go out and say, the entire judicial system, from the trial courts to the appellate courts up to the Supreme Court, is completely flawed. Like, she would realistically go and say that, regardless of whether there was a settlement or not. So, anyway, we'll talk a bit more about settlements generally, what goes into it, what do they mean. But I first want to go into the actual statements by both sides about this settlement, so that we can kind of understand what it is that has happened here, what is settled, what is maybe not settled, because we don't have a copy of the settlement document. We probably almost definitely never will. Typically, these are confidential documents. You can talk about them to a certain extent, but generally speaking, the amount, I mean, the one place that I've seen an amount reported on is from the Daily Mail. I don't know if that's actually accurate, right? We can't necessarily trust that these outlets have these things accurately, right? What was it? Was it New York Times or LA Times that said that like Jason Momoa had testified in the trial or something? I mean, it's the inaccuracies especially when it comes to speedy reporting from a lot of these outlets, is not necessarily what it used to be. Okay, I'll stop babbling and we can get into the actual statements here. Now, trigger warning, this is Amber Heard's words. So people are going to get angry as we read this, and nothing I can do about that, but let's go through it together. So this is Amber Heard's statement from, it says 8 hours ago. It probably is a little bit earlier than that, just because that's the last time I refreshed it. This is from Amber Heard on Instagram. You can go and find her and see this here. You can tell the comments on this post have been limited. So it's just people that she follows or what have you. That's why there's like literally 2 comments, and one of them is Eve Barlow. Love you always, my warrior friend. Okay. So, all right, here we go. Let's go into it. So Amber Heard says, after a great deal of deliberation, I have made a very difficult decision to settle the defamation case brought against me by my husband in Virginia. So first off, little brief reminder that the way that a settlement works is there have to be 2 parties to agree to it. We've talked about it in this context, right? Because people have said, like, why doesn't, like, why didn't one of them settle? Both of them have to agree on the settlement, right? So she has decided to make the very difficult decision to settle the defamation case brought against her by her husband. Realistically, what this means is, and she's not a lawyer. She's not a lawyer. Granted, she probably had lawyers look over this before it was posted, so I would still expect some degree of accuracy. I don't think that she just like Twitter thumbed this and then just immediately hit send. I think that this was definitely looked over multiple times by a number of people, probably. At least that's what I would expect. But so she didn't settle the case brought by Johnny Depp against her. She settled her appeal of that verdict. In other words, the verdict in which she was to pay $10 million to Johnny Depp for defaming her. Her appeal of that verdict is what they settled. You can settle a number of different types of claims. Most of the time when we are talking about settlements, we are talking about, I send a demand letter to a defendant, and they I say all of the things that they did wrong against my client, and this is what this is worth, and so let's, I'm about to file a complaint, so if you want to talk about it, let's talk about it before I do that. And then, we can save a lot of money for both sides and just resolve this claim right here, right now. Or you can do that after you file a complaint. But usually, for most cases, we are talking about settlements that are pre-trial. So at that first level here, the first trial court level. But this right here is settling a new claim, because obviously the trial has happened. There is a verdict that has come in. That is not being changed by any of this. What is being changed is how much she is going to be paying him for the verdict that, however many, what was it? 11? It was 11 jurors, right? I see these little details. Sometimes I get a little fuzzy, but at least I'm going to be honest when I'm fuzzy on them. Remind me, chat. It was 11 jurors, right? It was something different than 12 is what I remember. But all of them had to unanimously decide as to whether it was 7. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Thank you. Seven jurors. So, but regardless, they had to unanimously decide that she had defamed him, and vice versa on her claims. Right. And so as to all of the statements that he claimed against her, right? In other words, all of the statements that she had made about him, the jury found that all of those were defamatory. This settlement doesn't take any of that away. It doesn't take any of that away at all. In fact, if anything, sorry guys, what if anything does this do? If anything, this allows the verdict to stand exactly where it was on June 1st or 2nd, whatever verdict day was. And now she can't come back and get a new trial to try again. She can't try to get an appellate court to just reverse the verdict overall. But the one thing that it can do is that they have settled the claim as to how much she is supposed to pay him. Because what happens after a verdict comes in is, obviously there's the judgment, there's the monetary amount that is decided on top of who's right and who's wrong. In a civil case anyway, there's a monetary decision. The parties then have to come to terms with the reality as to whether or not that's even payable, whether that person is in the position to be able to pay that in the first place. And this is another bit of reality here, is that even when trial happens and there is a verdict, if the side that has lost has to pay the other side, um trying to jump through that hoop is a whole other fight. So essentially, this is settling that second issue that kind of bubbles up out of the verdict, but it does not change the verdict. Okay, let's continue reading. Um, it's important for me to say that I never chose this. I mean, this chose this. I don't know. There are a number of things that Amber Heard chose um, in this particular case having to do with this particular dispute. So whatever she's talking about by this, that's a little bit vague, admittedly. But okay, anyway, let's continue. It's important for me to say that I never chose this. I defended my truth, and in doing so, my life as I knew it was destroyed. I really would like to get past each sentence and not have to feel like I have to stop and respond. But you guys know, if you've been following this channel for a while, you know that I have a particular uh aversion to the phrase "my truth," right? Because as a litigator, I see this as the truth, the truth. Truth with a capital T, it does exist, and that's the whole purpose of litigation, right? Is to find out what the truth is as best as we possibly can with the evidence that's on the record. So whenever somebody says, especially in the context of litigation, "my truth," I prickle up, right? This is now when we're talking about psychology, right? Like when I had psychology in Seattle on my channel, he uses the phrase, Dr. Kirk, he uses the phrase, "my truth," someone speaking their truth. And that is different because it's in the context of therapy. Someone they are expressing their lived experience, to try to work through things. I think that in that particular context is different. But when we're talking about like out in the world where you are fighting for what is the truth of the matter, what is what is it that actually happened? There is one truth, right? There is only one truth, and it doesn't have versions, so to speak. The vilification I have faced on social media is an amplified version of the ways in which women are re-victimized when they come forward. Now, I know that there's also been a lot of talk about this statement alone being like more defamation, because when she says that the vilification, this is kind of a long winding sentence, and she really skirts it, in my opinion. She really hugs that curve quite a bit. But she talks about women being re-victimized when they come forward, and it echoes so strongly of the I became a victim all over again when I came out and spoke out about being victimized by whatever 2 years ago. Of course, obviously that's a very sloppy paraphrase of one of her statements from the Washington Post op-ed. But uh this sounds a lot like that statement, um, but she kinda gets away with it, in my opinion, by saying the vilification I have faced on social media is an amplified version of the ways in which women are re-victimized when they come forward. Essentially, what she's getting at is that she's getting re-victimized again, but, she kinda gets away with it by calling it a version of it, in other words. Okay, it's just okay. Anyway, now I finally have an opportunity to emancipate myself from something I attempted to leave over 6 years ago, and on terms I can agree to. She also has gotten into quite a bit of trouble when she refers to something that was however many years ago, right? 6 years ago, we're in 2022. 6 years ago was 2016. She's once again referring back to her divorce to Johnny Depp. I mean, and obviously, this is a settlement statement, right? This is a statement about a settlement agreement with Johnny Depp. We all know who she's talking about. Um, so she's obviously referring to the divorce between her and Johnny Depp, but, an opportunity to emancipate myself from something I attempted to leave over 6 years ago on terms I can agree to. Everyone has all kinds of thoughts on this, right? Because she had a massive settlement that she received after she got that DVTRO, the temporary restraining order, which is honestly relatively easy to get in Los Angeles. She never got a permanent restraining order, because after that point they had their divorce settlement, right? So there was no permanent restraining order, and so ultimately the arguably the need for the TRO, for the temporary restraining order, went away. So anyway, I have made no admission. This is not an act of concession, she says when she's acting in a concession. That's my editorializing here, because this is absolutely an act of defeat of sorts. There are no restrictions or gags with respect to my voice moving forward. Um, that's an interesting attitude that she can have on this. However, when she says that, there are multiple ways of interpreting that, right? So, no restrictions or gags with respect to my voice moving forward, meaning, does that mean that the settlement agreement is not placing any restrictions on what she can talk about? Fine. There are all kinds of reasons why that would be the case. The settlement agreement might have some restrictions on what she can talk about. For example, the monetary amount. Usually, the details of the settlement agreement are under a confidentiality clause. Um, so they could have um, ultimately um, they could have ultimately spelled out something in the settlement agreement saying that she can't talk about certain specific details, and maybe she's saying, whatever, I don't want to talk about those anyway, so that therefore that makes this still an honest statement, maybe, possibly. um but she does have limitations on what she can say. She still is limited by the laws of defamation, right? Because a jury has still found that she defamed Johnny Depp before. In every single one of those statements that he presented to the jury that were made by Amber Heard, the jury came back and said, "Yep, defamation. Yep, defamation. Yep, defamation." So she does have restrictions on what she can say moving forward, regardless of what the settlement agreement actually says. And again, we there is that gap here in this whole conversation, which is the actual terms of the settlement agreement itself, that we don't have, and we probably never will have, and that's perfectly fine. Most settlement agreements in out there in the world are not shared publicly because they're not supposed to be. So she's got this sort of like righteous stand that she's like, still standing there like with her fist in the air of like, yeah, never surrender, never surrender. But this is a lot of sort of like chest puffery, and like, she's just trying to make herself look like she is, going out strong, when realistically this is absolutely a concession. This absolutely is defeat. She says, I make this decision having lost faith in the American legal system, where my unprotected testimony served as entertainment and social media fodder. Um, well, the American legal system absolutely 100% did its job. And the fact that people have laughed at her testimony and used it on social media is a testament to the fact that people just don't believe her. People are allowed to have their opinions on whether or not she's a credible witness or a credible party. So so yes, okay, sure. There's been a lot, and to go through that, I'm sure, is painful, looking at things from her perspective. But I don't exactly blame the general public for not having a lot of empathy for her position, given the ways in which she has clearly lied and fabricated and dragged Johnny Depp through the mud through this whole process from the beginning. When I stood before a judge in the UK, oh, and I'm sorry, if she has lost faith in the American legal system, I that also could be just an indication of what exactly it was that she saw the American legal system as. If she saw the American legal system as a process that could be manipulated by y- by improper means, and by a politicization of a particular movement, where people have legitimately been harmed, then good. I'm glad she's lost faith in that version of the American legal system, because the American legal system is working a-okay as far as this case is concerned. When I stood before a judge in the UK, I was vindicated by a robust, impartial, and fair system where I was protected from having to give the worst moments of my testimony in front of the world's media, and where the court found that I was subjected to domestic and sexual violence. Well, a lot of things. Robust, impartial, and fair system. A lot of people have a lot of opinions about that because, there was a lot of evidence that did not come in the UK trial. um there was there I mean, just, yeah, there was a lot. There was a lot of evidence that was improperly left out in the UK. The judge the judge made determinations that just were that were mm, I don't know, we could say interesting, to say the least. um And this idea of her being protected from having to give the worst moments of her testimony in front of the world's media, I am sorry, but in this country, in the United States, we have, regardless of whether it's televised or not, there is a very strong First Amendment policy, First Amendment based policy, I should say, to allow the media in the courtroom, regardless of whether those are cameras that are broadcasting live, or whether they are reporters that are in there to observe and report themselves, because the purpose of that is to ensure that our justice system is working properly, that we have people that are able to to watch the process for themselves, to be able to report on it, to be able to blow a whistle if necessary. And it seems like what she is complaining about here is that she was not insulated from that sort of like whistleblowing function from the First Amendment here. So I'm sorry that you did not feel protected from that, but the First Amendment is pretty important here when it comes to maintaining our judicial integrity in these trials. Now, uh, okay, let's see here. She says, in the US, however, I exhausted almost all my resources in advance of and during a trial in which I was subjected to a courtroom in which abundant direct evidence that corroborated my testimony was excluded, and in which she uses "in which" a lot, in which popularity and power mattered more than reason and due process. Okay, let's break up this long rambling sentence. In the US, however, I exhausted almost all my resources in advance of and during a trial. Okay. Well, so so this is something that anyone could tell, right? Going into it. If you looked at all of the filings in this case, which were public, right? Like anyone could download these filings and look through them. The fact that they had so many, I talked about this so much, so many motions to compel between the two parties. You could tell just how contentious this was, that the two sides were fighting so much about just getting discovery passed around. I'm not saying that she has the ability to direct her attorneys to you know in their litigation strategy, to be super hard nosed about discovery or whatnot. But oftentimes attorneys will reflect their clients to a certain extent, right? Because a client is going to hire an attorney to 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 take on a case in a way that the client feels like is necessary for their case, right? So what I'm getting at is, you can have different styles of litigation. There are plenty of attorneys that will be much simpler when it comes to litigation, because that tends to be the most cost effective and the most just effective in litigation. I've found is when you know exactly what you need to get. You go, you get it, you fight for it if necessary. And then on, then you have the evidence that you need. The other side, if they are requesting something that you realistically know that they are going to be ultimately entitled to, why waste your client's money by fighting over it when you know at the end of the day the other side is basically going to get it? There are that's generally speaking been my my style of litigating. Other attorneys have a different perspective, right? You have other attorneys that will be a downright pit bull in litigation, that they will say, nope, every single interaction is an opportunity for a fight to make the other side a living hell. And that, they can spend their money, spend their money. It's a war of attrition, essentially. And that's basically what happened in this case. Is that it seemed like, just looking through the filings, parachuting in a little late in the pre-trial litigation, um, you could see that it was basically a war of attrition on either side. And so if you are a client that has attorneys that are doing this, and you don't, and you're getting worried about the bills that are stacking up, I will say this: as a client, you have the ability to say, yo, you're spending too much of my money. The strategy that you're taking is your strategy, but if this continues, I cannot afford this. Like, I need a different strategy here because my wallet can't afford this. So, her saying, at this point in the US, however, I exhausted almost all my resources in advance of and during trial. Yeah, that was pretty apparent. The thing is, what do you do when you are realistically exhausting all your resources? I mean, do you just ignore that and then say, "Nope, we're gonna go file an appeal. We're gonna go on this whole campaign of continuing forward, continuing forward, continuing forward." Or do you take a pause and say, "You know what? I maybe we should reexamine just how much juice there is left in this squeeze." So now she says, "I exhausted almost all my resources in advance of," okay, and then uh during a trial in which I was subjected to a courtroom in which abundant direct evidence that corroborated my testimony was excluded. The direct testimony, or the direct evidence that she is saying, that which corroborates her testimony, which she says is abundant, is of course none other than the contemporaneous doctor's notes, right? We talked about this. This is what she said in her appellate brief, which was that she said that the evidence that she said should have been let in, that was not, was she went to a psychologist, talked about the quote unquote abuse that she suffered at Johnny Depp's hands, and the doctor wrote those down in their notes, and that those notes should have been brought in as evidence, and should have been admitted, and she should have been able to testify to that, all this kind of stuff. So many problems with that. For me personally, the biggest problem with that is the fact that that's hearsay. It's her saying, this thing happened to me, and then a doctor just writing it down. The doctor writing down what Amber Heard said happened to her does not make her statement saying what happened to her any more or less legitimate. So and the problem with that, on top of that, just being basic hearsay, is that when it's written down by a doctor, sometimes that can fool people into thinking, oh, this is much more official. This is something that has weight to it. This is a doctor that is saying that she was abused by her husband or her ex-husband. So there are so many reasons why that was properly excluded. Not to mention the fact that the best testimony is coming directly from Amber Heard herself as to what actually happened to her. So no, that does not corroborate the the statements that she made about her supposedly being abused. None of that is true, but she thinks that it is, and she's going to continue with that forever until the end of time. And realistically, this is what she was going to do regardless of any kind of a settlement. And then she says, and in which popularity and power mattered more than reason and due process. Well, that's just simply flat out wrong. I mean, everyone that watched this trial knows from beginning to the end that we were able to watch this in a very detailed manner, right? I mean, we had people that were watching for the entire trial, beginning to end, morning till night, and then on weekends continuing to talk about this trial, right? In the interim, I was exposed to a type of humiliation that I simply cannot relive. Well, I mean, that may be true. That may be true. And that's sure. Okay. Power to her. Even if my US appeal is successful, the best outcome would be a retrial where a new jury would have to consider the evidence again. I simply cannot go through that for a third time. Yes, because realistically, another jury, another jury of her peers would look at the same evidence and would say, yeah, no, that's defamation. So can you imagine? Can you imagine if she actually wins at the appellate level, and then she says, and the appeals court says, okay, yes, we'll remand back to the trial court, and then they go back to trial, and then they have a whole other trial again and again and again, and then at the end of it, after another 6-week trial in Fairfax, Virginia, then the next 7 people that come in that somehow have no idea about the first trial, right? They come in and they say, no, it's definitely defamation. That 100% confirms it. There's realistically no win for Amber Heard here. So I don't even know. My bigger question here is how she ended up getting to this point where she even filed the appeal in the first place. Like who tried to sit down with her to talk about like what the road realistically looks like in the best case scenario, and who didn't? I don't know. Did that conversation even happen in the first place? Time is precious, and I want to spend my time productively and purposefully. For too many years, I have been caged in an arduous and expensive legal process, which has shown itself unable to protect me and my right to speech, my right to free speech. I cannot afford to risk an impossible bill, one that is not just financial, but also psychological, physical, and emotional. Women shouldn't have to face abuse or bankruptcy for speaking her truth, blah. But unfortunately, it is not uncommon. Okay, so I will say, so it's the thing that is frustrating here is that she switches from talking about her experience to then expanding this into a broader statement about women in general, and it's very frustrating because she should not be able to speak for anyone other than herself, because she doesn't speak for all women. She doesn't speak for all DV survivors either. You can see that just in the viewers of this trial, and where people who are DV survivors, both men and women, have come out on this trial, generally speaking, tend to be Depp supporters. Um, so okay. Now, and I will say, realistically, this is probably true that she says that she cannot afford more legal process. Probably. Should have made this decision months, if not years ago, because this litigation is insanely expensive. Insanely expensive. Folks watching and folks in the chat, I don't know if any of you have ever been a party to litigation, if you've had to hire a lawyer for anything, but even just to like get the file on a particular case and to analyze it and to understand, like to figure out a strategy, that takes time and effort, that costs money, and it gets expensive very, very, very quickly. So her saying, I cannot afford to risk an impossible bill. I believe that. And I do not want to minimize here for both sides. This is something that is financial, also psychological, physical, and emotional for both sides. That was one of my first statements about when Johnny Depp showed up in the courtroom was something along the lines of like, "Ooh, he has been wearing that stress." Because it looked like he had been wearing the stress of the litigation, of the defamation, of the divorce, all of that sort of accumulated, it seems like, on his shoulders for for the previous however many years. And, throughout trial, it looked like it sort of lightened up, but yeah, it can age a person. You can age someone 100 years through one trial. So, but the problem here, of course, is that she then takes her experience and then says women shouldn't have to face abuse or bankruptcy for speaking her truth. But unfortunately, it is not uncommon. And when we're talking about a woman who is speaking the truth, coming forward and speaking the truth because she has been abused, because she has gone through things, she has been wronged by someone. Absolutely, I don't think that anyone would agree that any woman or man, for that matter, should face abuse or bankruptcy for speaking the truth. But the problem here, of course, is that she's not talking about the truth. She's talking about literally her truth here, which is not the truth, which we can all very clearly tell just by having watched the trial, and a jury of her peers agreed. In settling this case, I am also choosing the freedom to dedicate my time to the work that helped me heal after my divorce, work that exists in realms in which I feel seen, heard, and believed, and in which I know I can affect change. I mean, whatever, whatever she feels like is the change that she wants to affect. I don't know. That may cause some fear for you. It gives me a little bit of trepidation. Like, what exactly are the changes that she wants to effect? Hopefully she won't actually be able to affect whatever changes those are, though. So she's saying that she wants to turn to ostensibly some kind of charity work, or some kind of um activist work, I guess, or something. We'll see. We'll see what she actually does next. I will not be threatened, disheartened, or dissuaded by what happened from speaking the truth. Now she finally says the truth. No one can and no one will take that from me. My voice forever remains the most valuable asset I have. That's really unfortunate if that's the case. If her voice is the most valuable asset that she has, it's unfortunate, because she's definitely used it multiple times to lie and lie and lie. And here she continues to bloviate. I'd like to thank my outstanding appellate and original trial teams for their relentless hard work. I want to thank everyone who has supported me, and I turn my attention to the growing support that I've felt and seen publicly in the months since trial, and the efforts that have been made to show solidarity with my story. Any survivor knows that the ability to tell their story often feels like the only relief, and I cannot find enough words to tell you the hope your belief in me inspires, not just for me, but for all of you. Thank you. See you soon. It's interesting that she says that, because any survivor knows that the ability to tell their story often feels like the only relief. And that seems like um, she's describing Johnny Depp here, right? Because that was ultimately, at the end of the day, what he said was that he's like, this is the only thing that I want, is to be able to tell my story, to be able to finally be seen, be heard. And he's realistically the survivor here in this case, right? This is what anyone can see who actually watched the trial. So, okay, thank you. See you soon. So she says, okay. But it's interesting here, because it's not entirely clear to me based on looking at this. Now we're back to the first page of her Instagram statement. But, back to this first sentence here, where she says, after a great deal of deliberation, I've made a very difficult decision to settle the defamation case brought against me by my ex-husband in Virginia. She's referring again to her appeal of the verdict against her. So she is relinquishing that. It is not clear from this statement as to whether or not Johnny Depp is also backing down on his appeal of the Adam Waldman statement verdict, right? Because there was that one statement by Adam Waldman that the jury found was defamatory there. So I'm just going to turn to one article here, because it looks like TMZ was the first place that we saw this statement by Johnny Depp's attorneys here. Okay. right here. This is in their update to their article. So you can see here, they say Amber Heard settles Johnny's defamation case, paying only $1 million. And that ellipses, of course, the suggestion of this article or of this headline seems to be that this is a disappointing loss for Johnny Depp because she's only paying him $1 million as opposed to the $10 million that the jury said that she should be paying him. But I let me just say this right now. I kind of alluded to this earlier, but realistically, she's not going to be able to pay the full $8 million. And at the same time, Johnny Depp has always maintained throughout this entire litigation that he was not doing it for the money, right? And this figure right here, the $1 million that she's supposedly paying him in this settlement reinforces that, right? I mean, it to me, it reinforces that idea to me because it tells me that he was being honest with what he said about his motivations in this trial and his motivations in this litigation. And so that makes me feel like, okay, so he was being honest about that. He probably was being honest about the rest of everything else that he was saying, and there's nothing new here, right? It just reinforces what we already believe about Johnny Depp anyway. Now, before I actually do go into reading these, let me get a couple of these here. Who's a good boy? That's a funny name. Thank you so much for becoming a YouTube member. Welcome to Bite Club. I really appreciate your support here. Oftentimes on this channel we talk about subjects that will get videos demonetized all the time, and having videos or having support from people like you, whether it's through YouTube memberships, through local support, or through Patreon support, is always such a welcome thing, because it sort of diminishes that stress that you can get from having a video get demonetized, because it does happen from time to time. And realistically, I don't want to have to gauge the topics that I'm going to talk about based on monetization. I want to talk about what I think is important. I want to go into subjects that I think are important to talk about, including this one, right? So thank you so much for your support, and to everyone else that is a member also, thank you so much for your support as well. There's no planned anyway members only live stream this Friday. Usually every Friday I do, but this being Christmas weekend, that's not planned this week. But next week for sure there will be a members only live stream for the 30th, I think, is next Friday. So be sure to join us there. And then let's see here. Shibaka Wookie, thanks so much for your super chat. Says she wanted money, lied, got sued, really lied, lost. Yes. Yep. That's basically it in a nutshell, isn't it? Nicole F, thanks so much for your super chat. Says, as the Kraken of Justice takes her ship, I surrender, Big BC, but you'll never take my truth. Nicole, that's a good. I appreciate this. I appreciate every bit and every single emoji that you put into this. This is great. This is great. Alrighty. So, okay. All right, let's take a look here now at this from TMZ. This is an update to their previous article. I'm not going to read the entire article, but this is just kind of honing in on the statement by Johnny Depp's team. A source close to Johnny Depp tells us he'll be making a pledge followed by a contribution to several charities using the $1 million. Again, consistent with everything that we know and love about Johnny Depp here, right? Now, of course, the pledge followed by a contribution, followed by a donation. Uh, uh, we can all trust that Johnny Depp knows the difference between pledge and donate, right? that coming up in this context, it feels a little prickly, but we do have a lot of confidence that Johnny Depp will actually end up donating that amount, right? Contrary to what Amber Heard says, our source tells us the judgment can still be used against her in the future if she repeats the defamatory allegations. That is 100% true. 100% true. If she goes out and continues to make these statements about him, and if she does it egregiously enough, he can take her back to court. He can take her back to court. So if he wants to, now the question, that's a whole other question, right? Like, would he actually want to? I don't know. Probably not. So the Amber Heard that we all know of, has a decent likelihood, realistically, of running her mouth more so than what we might expect in other contexts, right? Because Johnny seems to be a bit of a patient person, right? More so than what we would like to see, because we don't like seeing people running their mouth with lies, right? Um Depp's attorneys, Camille Vasquez and Benjamin Chu, tell us, "We are pleased to formally close the door on this painful chapter for Mr. Depp, who made clear throughout this process his intent to bring the truth to light." They continue, "This was never about the money. The jury's unanimous decision and the judgment in his favor against Miss Heard remain fully in place, and the payment of $1 million, which Mr. Depp is pledging and will donate to charities, reinforces Miss Heard's acknowledgement of the conclusion of the legal system's rigorous pursuit for justice." Right. I mean, you're not going to see. So I guess, the $1 million here, I guess it's not just reported by Daily Mail. This is also in the Depp team statement here. Um, the you're not going to see it reported anywhere, it seems like, from what it appears. You're not going to see it reported anywhere that Johnny Depp is giving any amount to Amber Heard, right? So this is a confirmation of the verdict, and to say, okay, we're putting our knives down. We are no longer fighting the appeals process in here. From this statement, they don't say it explicitly, but it does sound like, the fact that they say that this will formally close a door on this painful chapter for Mr. Depp. This makes it sound like probably both appeals are going to be withdrawn, right? So Amber Heard's appeal of the verdict against her, I mean, for sure, it seems like from her statement, it sounds pretty clear that she's withdrawing that. And then at the same time, this makes it seem like Johnny Depp is also going to be withdrawing his. Both of them basically are saying, all right, we're putting our knives down. And in the process, Amber Heard is giving him money. She's paying over $1 million, which to me, that says she's saying uncle. She's saying uncle, right? She's saying, I don't want to continue paying for this. Instead, I'll pay you $1 million so that it all stops. If this was Johnny Depp coming from a place of weakness, he would be ostensibly giving her money to convince her to go away. But instead, it's the reverse. So I really do view this as a win. And you know what? Let's get a quick poll in here. Okay, let's go. We're going to do a quick poll on this. Do you see this as a win for Johnny Depp or no? Let me know what you guys think. Now, and you guys can let me know in the chat why it is that you think it's a win, or maybe a loss here for Johnny Depp. I think, yes, the disappointment of the monetary value. We all want to see her completely walloped, right? We want her to go away and to not continue talking about this stuff. We don't want her to come back and say that she's got some kind of a book deal, or some kind of a Netflix documentary, or some kind of like special documentary that is going to be shown at some sort of film festival or something. You know what I mean? Like we emotionally, on an emotional level, we want to see a total victory in this war. But realistically, this is probably the best option for Johnny Depp, because this means that there's no endless appeals process, right? There's no more reply briefs that have to be filed back and forth between the two. There's no more prospect of an appeal from the appellate court, up to the Virginia Supreme Court or up to the United States Supreme Court. Um, and at least in terms of the legal process, this ends it, unless Johnny Depp decides to bring her to the mat again, because she's running her mouth again. So let's see here. Let's see here. What are folks saying here? Let's see. Elizabeth Me says his compassion is awe-inspiring. I honestly think though that a big part of this is not so much his compassion, and I do agree that he has an amazing sense of compassion and empathy. I mean, we saw that with Captain Corey. He's been continuing to show his support for Captain Corey in so many beautiful ways, as he does for so many kids out there that are struggling with illnesses. But I think in this particular case, it's also just he's done, right? Like he said after the verdict that he wanted to move on, that he wanted to be able to just live his life and not be thinking about her ever again. And so long as the legal process continues on, she's going to be in some respects in his life. Let's see. Katie says, in the end, it is. I'm a bit miffed because a settlement in any case allows her to keep playing the victim, but at least no one will believe her. And I hope JD can finally put it in the past. Yeah, I think so. I think so because you know there are celebrities out there whose industry is victimhood, right? There are other examples that we could probably come up with and talk about, but that's not the subject of this particular live stream. But I think Amber Heard is one of those who that's her trade, right? She trades in victimhood, and so long as that there is a market for her to sell that story, she will continue to try to market that as much as possible. But I think that the trial has done a massive good work for Johnny Depp. And no one who actually watched the trial and formulated their opinions on an objective basis by watching it by themselves, on their own, whether they watched through this channel, Emily D. Baker's channel, or through Law and Crime without any kind of commentary at all. No one who watched the trial is going to be convinced by the things that Amber Heard then runs around and spews, right? And so I think that yeah, there's probably going to be a PR campaign that continues on. Yeah, there's probably going to be uh more support from the Cat 10 barges and Taylor Lorenz's of the world for someone like Amber Heard. But there's also a massive market of people that produce content that are able to take them to the mat on this conversation as well. So yeah. AM says the less he has to deal with her, the better for him. Agreed. Completely agreed. Thrift with Joy frees JD to direct his movie and perhaps return to Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah, if that's what he wants, right? Or continue on with his music. That was his first love, after all, according to his testimony at trial. Patricia Burns, is she really going to go away though? Don't get our hopes up, Alita. I mean, I say that people want her to go away, right? I personally think that I don't like people being fully canceled. If I am looking at this maybe naively, if I'm looking at this in the most ideal situation for literally like everyone, on this planet, it is that she re-examines her life. She re-examines the things that she's done, has a period of time of contrition, and then kind of comes back and lives a decent life, right? Like I don't like to see anyone canceled, destroyed, like to say that like that someone is, and I know that this is an unpopular opinion. I know that there are people that are like, nope, jail time forever, go away forever. Like you do not deserve to exist beyond this point. I have always maintained that, regardless of if it's her or Johnny Depp or anyone else, I they still have to exist on this planet to a certain point, right? Like up to a certain point through their life. Just because they've done wrong things doesn't mean that we just automatically say you should no longer exist. And I think that, giving an opportunity for true contrition has to be true, has to be sincere, is something that is absolutely necessary. But if she does, to live a decent life afterwards, because if she has true contrition, she's truly learned her lessons, it means that she's going to move forward living a different kind of life than what she's living right now, because this behavior that she has kept up since 2013, I guess, or whatever it was, um, is what is not okay. It's not her being a person. It's the behavior that she's engaged in that has to change. Sandra McButton says it's a win, but not satisfying for us who wants her to shut up. Of course. Like, that's the part that's not so satisfying for everyone that has been watching and living this trial, right? But you have to remember too that at the end of the day, there are two parties here whose lives really make a difference here in this settlement, right? In this case. But I it's you're right. It's not satisfying for us, but my hope is that it's satisfying for Johnny Depp. If it's satisfying for him, I don't really care too much beyond that. And I feel like we should all maybe keep that in mind a little bit. Shireen / World War II. I'm hoping he has the power to have a default if she talks about him again. And that may be also another good reason to settle at this point as opposed to at a later point, because keeping funds in the reserves for in case you need it later might be beneficial. Shibaka Wookie says it was never about the money for Johnny. So yeah, it's a win. He wanted to defend himself from her lies and the whole world saw the truth. Exactly. That's where I'm at. Kit Kat says, Shireen, exactly. Now all we need to believe is Johnny was just too powerful a man for a mere woman like her to continue. Oh man. Katie Kite says, I wish it at least felt like she had to pay in some tangible way. But if this is what he wants, seems that's the case, to just end this. I mean, overall, it's a win. Yep. I agree. Lila Jane 3, that is my concern, that she will make money giving interviews, book deal, or documentary. She might. And then there will be plenty of responses to her, though, realistically. So she complains about the social media response to all of this stuff and saying, I'm not protected. I haven't been protected. People made a mockery of me. The reality is that if she continues doing what she's doing what she's been doing, saying the things that she's been saying, making statements like this on Instagram, if she sits down for interviews, she writes a book, she does a documentary, you better believe that there are going to be plenty of people on social media that are going to have something to say about it. So that's not going to go away just with the settlement, right? So the settlement doesn't impact any of us in the way in which we digest and talk about this case. That's just, I don't know. That's just another thought. Marilyn Schroeder, could a caveat be added that she not profit for any book or movie deal? And if she does, it goes to Johnny. That could be a point in the settlement agreement. A settlement agreement is just a contract between the two, and they agree to a number of conditions. So that could be one of the conditions that's in there. From what it sounds like from these statements, probably not, because it sounds like Johnny Depp is probably just happy to have the appeals kind of end and the legal process at least end so that he can continue moving on with his life. Time Mao, thanks so much for this generous super chat. Says, I have seen people saying that the $1 million will be from the insurance companies since they have to agree to the settlement. It is their money. It is their money that Heard is using, right? So I ask, is Amber really paying anything? I mean, realistically, if she intends to continue having insurance coverage from the insurance company, her premiums will go up, right? It's just like when you have auto insurance, you get into an accident, they pay for a certain amount or all of the damages, right? I mean, depending on the policy, of course, different insurance coverages will cover more or less. But regardless of how much of that they cover, your premiums will be going up after that point, right? Because of the fact that they have determined that you are much more risky. So if she wants to continue getting insurance coverage uh, for her speech around the world, then she's going to have some pretty massive premiums, in my opinion. So she is not necessarily paying directly for this, but she is going to be paying for it in other ways if she continues to be insured, which is my guess is that she would be. Oh, let's see here. There was another. Let's see here. John O'Rourke. Thanks so much for your super chat, says bites. But going back to Ben's statements, she's not allowed to continue her nonsense without threats of legal concerns, correct? Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. Yeah. She's not allowed to just go around and defame him. She's not allowed to do that. So, and again, we talked about her Instagram statement. It kind of does hug that curve pretty tightly, because she does refer back to, being, she says that she's re-victimized and all that kind of stuff. So, but it skirts it. But realistically, she probably would need to say a little bit more than that in order to really run into trouble with that. Aussie Chris, thank you so much for the generous super sticker. Let's see, we have a question here from Caitlin Klein. Will this halt the lawsuits with the insurance companies? I don't know exactly what this is going to do with the insurance companies' lawsuits, because I think that those lawsuits, and I haven't been covering them as closely as, say, Emily D. Baker has, but those lawsuits are not just about the verdict money, but also about the underlying attorney's fees. So the fees that are to be paid to the various firms that have worked on this case, that doesn't change with this amount that has to be paid over to Johnny Depp now, this new number, right? Because that's unrelated to the fees that have to be paid for the services rendered for representing her. So all kinds of fees and costs have to be paid to these attorneys for their time. They've got to get paid for their work, right? Regardless of whether it's a win or a loss for Amber Heard. So I don't know what, if any, what kind of an impact that will have, if there is any impact. So yeah, Don Baca, yeah, you can't be re-victimized if you weren't victimized before. 100%, completely with you on that. Let's see here. Okay. Let's get I'm going to end this poll now. So we've got here the results on the poll. Do you see this as a win for Johnny Depp or no? 84% said yes. 15% said no. 572 votes. Votes. Sorry. Okay. I mean, that's how I feel about it too. Like I said, it would be nice to have that total destruction victory where you know that she's never going to come out and say anything about Johnny Depp again. She's never going to lie again. She's not gonna Pinocchio her way through life. We would love to see a promise like that, but that's just realistically not going to happen, regardless of any kind of a settlement here. And I think personally that this is ultimately, at the end of the day, it is a good thing. A good thing, because Johnny Depp can move on. He can move forward with doing the things that he really wants to be doing, living the life that he deserves to live without having the continued cloud of litigation. So that is it for me, but we'll see where this goes. We'll see if she's got a book deal or a Netflix series or something. I don't know. And then we'll see if there's more that requires a response from folks that know what they're talking about. Maybe we'll be there. We'll see. All right. Well, with that, thank you to everyone for joining me. Thank you to the folks who super chatted. Thanks to the folks for joining Bite Club, for supporting the channel. Really, really does help. It really, really does help with being able to devote time and resources to this channel as opposed to elsewhere. And of course, also, Martin K, thanks so much for this reminder. Don't forget about Captain Corey. He's almost at 210K subs. Yes, let's continue subscribing to Captain Corey. Such a wonderful, wonderful ball of joy that we've been able to help out with all of the love and wonderful stuff. So let's end on a positive note. How about that? I love doing that. Thank you, Martin K. So folks that haven't done so already, I am going to, unless somebody else can beat me to it by getting the link to Captain Corey's channel in the chat. Let's see here. Where oh gosh, it's not Captain Corey, it's Crack in the Box. Here we go. Okay. We need to continue to promote this. Crack in the Box. Here we go. There we go. Don Bach has got it. Okay. Subscribe to his channel because that is a just a wonderful way to continue spreading love into the world. If you don't know about him, he's a kid who is on palliative care. That means that he's had 2 heart transplants, and he's basically decided he's not going to go through anymore. And so he and his family are just living out the rest of his days as beautifully and as fully as they possibly can. And so one of his goals was he really, really desperately wanted to earn a silver play button by getting 100,000 subscribers. I was alerted to his channel. I was alerted to his channel when he was around like 7,000, 8,000, something like that. And I mean, he's over 200,000 now. I still would love to see him get to 1 million. So if you have not done so already, link is pinned in the chat. Thank you so much, Don Baca, for finding that. It's pinned in the chat. I'm going to put it in the description below as well. So anyone that hasn't done so already, please do subscribe, watch his videos, like his videos. He is such a just a beautiful soul, and we really need to continue to promote this bit of beauty in the world, because it really is a great way to have a bit of a palate cleanser. And I guess before I finish talking about that, I'll just insert this in real quick because I don't want to end on this. Jerry M, thanks so much for your super chat. It says Harvey Weinstein guilty in Los Angeles. Good. That's good too. Very happy about that. So thank you so much for that update. Did he mean, was he found guilty, or did you mean that he just deserves it? If he is found guilty, good. If he has not been yet, then we will continue watching to see if he will be. Okay. So, but back to Captain Corey. He is just a beautiful, beautiful soul, and everything that we can possibly do to make this the best Christmas possible for him is the one of the best possible uses of our time, right? So, ending on that note, because oftentimes we get frustrated on this channel, we get angry on this channel, we talk about some heavy stuff, but this is one of those beautiful, beautiful things that we can do to get a little bit more good stuff going. So there it is, Crack in the Box, right there. Right there. Okay. All right. That's all. That's about it. That's all I got. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much to everyone for super chats. Thank you to everyone for becoming YouTube members. Thank you to everyone just in the chat and just watching. I appreciate every little bit of your attention, your engagement. And last but not least, always to the mods. Thank you so much to the mods for continuing to usher in conversation where people can agree or disagree, and yeah, but do so in a way that is respectful and kind, and we can all continue living with one another, right? Okay, alrighty, I will see you guys in the next video.